The last time Aris Suharyanto saw his wife was through a hospital window. He never got to meet their newborn baby. When Suharyanto's pregnant wife Rina Ismawati and two of their three children fell ill last month, he initially thought it was a common cold. But with COVID-19 cases rising in Indonesia, he took them to get tested. The whole family tested positive for COVID-19, including Suharyanto, and 43-year-old Ismawati was admitted to hospital, where she lay in bed, occasionally sending Suharyanto messages through WhatsApp. She told me that her condition was getting worse, Suharyanto said. She couldn't breathe. On June 22, Rizky died in hospital. Suharyanto had only ever seen him in a photo. The following day, Ismawati died, too. Lodare Suharyanto's wife and child are just two of the devastating and growing COVID-19 toll in Indonesia, the world's fourth most populous country, which is fast becoming the new center of Asia's coronavirus crisis. With more than 2.7 million people infected and more than 70,000 dead, onlookers caution the country may not have reached its peak. The country had seen a dramatic increase in confirmed cases after the festive holidays, Indonesia's health minister, Budi Gunadi Sadikin, said earlier this month. He put the explosion in cases down to the fast-spreading Delta variant, which was first identified in India and has since spread to almost 100 countries. Indonesia entered a lockdown on July 10, by which point the country was reporting more than 30,000 new cases each day. The government said it is mobilizing all resources to deal with the COVID-19 surge, including bringing in oxygen from other countries to increase the supply. And the current numbers likely don't capture the whole picture. More than 27% of tests come back positive, according to Johns Hopkins University figures, giving Indonesia one of the highest test positivity rates in the world. The numbers suggest that many cases still aren't being caught. Another major barrier to controlling Indonesia's outbreak is the flood of misinformation. Amid all the noise, warnings about the severity of COVID-19 are being lost. CDC director says COVID-19 is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated, as all 50 states see a rise in new cases. Glasser, reporting on General Milley's fears of Trump, was the most terrified I've ever been as a reporter. A new CNN reporting. Senior Biden officials consider COVID-19 lab leak theory as credible as natural origins explanation. LeBron James in Space Jam. A new legacy. Surgeon General issues warning over vaccine misinformation as White House turns up the heat on Facebook. Angela Merkel's ambivalent legacy. Texas hospital chief. We need to step up. Director of new Bourdain film explains why he opened with this. The link between extreme weather and climate change. U.S. intel assessments paint bleak picture in Afghanistan. Way jumped the gun. Florida doctor explains why the state's COVID-19 cases are increasing. Scientists crusade to protect seahorses. Rep. McCarthy meets with Trump as January 6 probe approaches. Fire threat continues for the West as rain and storms threaten the Midwest. Sebastião Salgado's Amazonian Odyssey. Mark Spitz on the swimming landscape. Post Phelps. A few weeks ago, Karunia Sekar Kananti, 32, noticed her 2-month-old son Jafran had a fever, but she assumed it was just a common cold. Her mother had a flu and cough, but Kananti didn't think it was COVID because her mother still had a sense of smell. Her symptoms didn't seem to be COVID-19, so I was calm about responding to it, she said. Then Jafran, me, and my other child got sick, too. 2 weeks ago, as he became weaker and his breathing became more labored, she brought Jafran to hospital, where scans showed COVID-19 had already damaged his right lung. She remembers the doctor telling her to prepare for the worst. You can be optimistic, but it all depends on God, she remembers him saying. On July 5, Kananti's mother died. Kananti still doesn't know whether her mother had COVID because she wasn't tested. Kananti didn't go to her funeral. She was in hospital with her young son. Aman B. Pulungan, the president of the Indonesian Pediatric Society, said it's common for parents to assume their child doesn't have COVID-19, in part because many people in Indonesia are unaware children can be infected. Families do little to protect children from the virus, and even when they are infected, parents often think it's a common cold. Schools were closed last year, and have been closed again as part of this latest lockdown, but Indonesian children are currently on summer holidays. We don't protect our children. This is the problem, he said. A more extreme type of commentary has been making its rounds on social media, questioning the legitimacy of the government's pandemic response altogether, and even dismissing any official information about COVID-19, they wrote. When Kananti and her baby Jafrin arrived at the hospital, all the intensive care unit beds were already full. A front desk officer took pity on Jafrin and helped them get a room, and the next day, they were moved to an isolation room with other children infected with COVID-19. Jafrin was the youngest of them all, she said. When Kananti talked to CNN earlier this month, she said there were 9 children in the hospital room with them, and many more were waiting for beds. The outbreak and the shortage of hospital beds makes those with underlying conditions even more vulnerable. According to Pulungan, from the Indonesian Pediatric Society, many children dying of COVID-19 have underlying health conditions. That was the case for Tantian Hermawati's baby Biswara Katrawijaya, who was born with heart disease. She believes he may have been infected with COVID-19 when he was in hospital in November last year having surgery for his condition. After he caught COVID-19, she could barely look at her baby's face. It was obvious he was in pain. He died on December 11, 2020, before he had even reached 4 months old. Hermawati believes she was lucky. At least she was able to attend his funeral. She advises other parents to be more careful and cautious than she was, and stay at home to avoid exposing children to COVID. It's really sad if our children get infected. Our babies can't tell us which part of their body are hurt, and we also don't know it. So please just stay at home and obey the health protocol. Indonesia's main hope in addressing the spiraling crisis are vaccines, the country's President Joko Widodo said Wednesday. Fair and equal access to vaccines must be guaranteed since we see there is still a wide gap in vaccine access throughout the country, he said, according to Antara News. But for the millions already affected by COVID, those vaccines will come too late. For Kananti and her baby Jafrin, the situation is looking up. His doctor is more optimistic about his survival, but warns that Jafrin might always have diminished lung capacity. She says she underestimated COVID, and thought it was impossible that it could affect her child. I was late when I reached the hospital, and I really regret it. Suharyanto, the father of 3, lives with the guilt of not knowing if he brought COVID-19 into their home. He works as a motorcycle taxi driver in Semarang City, in central Java province. He was always coming and going, but his wife stayed at home. The children are already carrying on as normal. But me, I still cry on my own. I regret things, but I just never imagined that this could happen, he said. I still can't believe that she was gone that fast. Suharyanto wants people to understand that COVID is not fake news or a conspiracy. To him, it is painfully real. They've never had their family die from COVID, he said.